Video. Okay, good. Okay. Rob Road. I don't see Laura.
I'm here.
Oh, hi Laura, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Megan, you want me to wait to open it?
I mean, technically, we're waiting to see if we can get quorum.
Is she in the attendees by chance?
That's what I'm looking for. Peggy usually is. Okay, I see Peggy.
You do?
Yes, I'm promoting. So if she is here, then once she promotes to panelist, Madam Chair, we can get started.
If we did have to change the date of the meeting, you said it would have to be done this evening, is that correct?
Yes, anything that gets continued needs to be continued to a date certain.
Mhm.
So we need that date when we continue.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Peg.
Hi.
Peggy, you're still showing up as an attend. Oh, there you go. Okay, you are moving to a panelist, Peggy. Okay, there she is. Okay, we have quorum.
Okay. Good. Okay. It being 7:36 p.m. on October 19th, 2022, I call this meeting the Brockton Conservation Commission to order. The meeting is being conducted remotely in accordance with the extension of the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. Real-time public participation and comment can be addressed to the Conservation Commission utilizing the Zoom virtual meeting software for remote access. If you wish to comment during a public input portion of a hearing, please use the raise your hand function to be addressed at the appropriate time. If you are joining by phone only, please press *9 to raise your hand. A copy of this recording will be posted on the city's web pages. All votes will be done via roll call to assure count accuracy. Please note that discussion of all agenda items shall be limited in time to ensure progress through tonight's agenda. With the permission of the commission, I'd like to take items 8 and 9 out of order, Heritage Court and Stone Farm, and place item 7, Black Ledge Apartment Complex, last on the agenda, if I have your permission to do so.
Curtis, I.
Thank you. So Black Ledge Complex will be last on the agenda this evening. Okay. For roll call attendance, each commissioner, please announce with your first and last name that you were here.
Laura Beekler here.
Peggy Curtis here.
Joyce Voris here. Thank you, Commissioners. Quorum is established. The first item on the agenda is a request for certificate of compliance for 149 Thatcher Street, a single-family home. Is the applicant or representative available?
Yes, I've promoted applicant Ricky De Silva.
Hello, how you doing?
Hi, Mr. De Silva. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Good. Will we be able to see you on video?
Hold on. I'm sorry. I'm learning how to play with this. All right, here you go.
Hi, Mr. De Silva. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Good, good. So if you would give us an update, please, on where we are with Thatcher Street.
All right. Yeah. So I purchased the property and I'm a local builder. I purchased the property and there was a order of conditions attached to it in regards to conservation. So, you know, I went through the order of conditions. I hired an environmental monitor. I met with Megan prior to construction, and I did everything. Well, I feel like I did everything required, and I'm hoping you guys would feel the same way as well. I have the order of conditions in front of me, and I went off the list and checked off pretty much most of the stuff that I did get done. So I'm looking to see if I can get issued a certificate of compliance.
Okay, thanks very much. Dr. Shafe?
Yes, so I have been out to the site and looked at the as-built plan. It looks like, except for a few minor changes outlined in my report, the work has been done in compliance with the order of conditions. So I would recommend that the commission can consider issuing a complete certificate of compliance with ongoing conditions E1 and E2. So those are the no use of herbicides and pesticides, and also the permanent limited work markers, which are already installed. And I would also make a note that the commission could consider issuing a letter to who will be the new homeowner, just because there is still Japanese knotweed on the site that looks like it could start encroaching onto the existing lawn. And the future homeowner might be interested in doing more mitigation work. So it might behoove us to reach out to them early in case they're looking for assistance with that, so that they stay in compliance with the Wetlands Protection Act.
And Ricky, were there any of these conditions that you felt as though you were not able to meet?
No, I feel like I met all of them. And like she mentioned, I did make a little bit of a change. There was in the back corner, there was some concrete as part of the limit, the scope of the limit of work area. The previous owner who lives to the left of it, they had some concrete over there that led into a gate. So I took up the concrete and I just put a fence over there, and then I put some native plants over there, and I ordered some seeds online that were in compliance from the environmental monitor told me to order those ones that were in compliance of wetlands.
Mhm. Commissioners, do you have any questions?
No, I do not at this time.
Commissioner Curtis?
I do not have any questions at this time.
We don't have to close the hearing, correct? It's just,
No, this is not a hearing like a notice of intent.
okay. Okay, so I entertain a motion to issue a certificate of compliance with a
I'll make
condition as stated.
I'll make a motion to grant the certificate of compliance with the conditions that have been outlined in the agent's report.
Second.
So a motion has been made and seconded to issue a certificate of compliance for 149 Thatcher Street. And the motion has been made and seconded. For the vote, please.
Beekler, aye.
Curtis, I.
Boris, I. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Have a good evening.
You too. And Megan, a very quick question about the concept of a letter to homeowners. Do you know if there's any way that we might be able to have a trigger letter or something that from the assessor's office, when we know that something that is within wetlands purview undergoes a sale, if it might trigger a letter to the commission, so that way the commission would be able to send out a general introduction form?
I can look into it, but again, I would note, as we are familiar, the assessor's database often takes longer to update than we might like. So I think eventually we could get a new homeowner from that, but it would probably be delayed significantly from the sale. So I think we should revisit potentially at a future meeting how we might want to establish a procedure for that.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. I thought the idea was a wonderful one, though. Thank you. Okay. Item 2 on the agenda, an extension request for order of conditions for a single family home on 34 Oakland Street. Is anyone present for the applicant?
Madam Chair, I do not see anyone.
No applicant, no representative?
I do not see them, so if you would like, I can review.
It would be
on behalf
fine.
of-
Yes, if you would do that. Thank you, Dr. Shea.
Okay, so this is a request for an extension for an existing order of conditions at what is now called 34 Oakland Street. This was an order issued in 2019. It is coming up for expiration in November. This project began its early site work. The erosion controls were staked out. They held the pre-construction meeting. But this was in March 2020, and then following the COVID state of emergency, the owner has had issues with retaining a reputable contractor to do the work, and so has not gone forward with the construction, but still intends to do so and did pull a building permit within the past month. So she is requesting an extension for 3 years to hopefully be able to move forward with her current contractor. Because this is a valid order, the commission can grant an extension for up to 3 years. I did visit the site just to see how things were looking. The site has revegetated a bit since it was cleared. The only comment I had was in regards to clarifying a structure on the site, which I confirmed with the engineer that it's the existing private well on the site, which was shown on the original plan. My only other comment then, which I would recommend as a stipulation for an extension, would be that the erosion control barrier be restored and reestablished, because it is over 2 years old at this point, and so it is a bit worn. But I think the commission can grant the extension with that stipulation of replacing the erosion controls.
Okay. Thank you. I entertain a motion to extend the extension request for the order of conditions for site 34 Oakland Street.
I will make a motion to request to grant the extension request for 34 Oakland Street with the erosion conditions that Dr. Chavez has reviewed.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded to extend the order of conditions for an additional 3 years for 34 Oakland Street. May I have a vote, please?
Beekler, aye.
Curtis, I.
Voris, aye. Motion passes. Thank you. The next item on the agenda was enforcement order update, 1330 Pleasant Street. I did notice that there was a very recent addition to the files that, is there anyone here for that, for the applicant or Dr. Shaba, if you'd like to just perhaps give a background?
Sure, so I don't see anyone for this item, but yes, as you'll recall, there is an enforcement order for this property that had a requirement to submit a notice of intent by September 21st. At your last meeting, you extended that deadline to October 19th, which is today. So this afternoon, I received from the owner's engineer a draft notice of intent and draft plan. Looking through it briefly, it is addressing or is in response to the enforcement order as requested. They are labeling it as a draft because technically it is currently missing the certified abutters list, which means it's not technically a complete order of condition, excuse me, it's not a complete application under the Wetlands Protection Act. However, we wouldn't be hearing it tonight anyway. It's would be scheduled for the November 16th meeting. So the intention is that they will submit the complete filing for the filing deadline, which would be October 26th, to get on the November 16th agenda, but they submitted this version as a draft to show the commission that they have been working on it. And once they get the abutters notification, they should have a complete filing.
Okay, thank you. The only question that I did have was, I know on another case where there was an enforcement order as well as an NOI, that they had two separate file numbers and they were like two separate issues. When I read through the Pleasant Street draft, it seemed like both were kind of mushed together in one, but I'm not sure. But could you
Yes, so it's technically will be two file numbers because the original order of conditions for the house construction has expired. So technically the owner can't keep working or doing jurisdictional work under that order. However, he can't get a certificate of compliance either because the work that he did was not in compliance. However, one thing he can do, and the commission has recommended he do, is file a new notice of intent that includes both the remediation work he needs to do and the additional improvements he proposed. Because it's a single family house lot, they are intertwined in that way. It's one lot. It's basically site work, backyard work. So ultimately, the way to get it all permitted would be to get an order of conditions through this new notice of intent. If everything is in compliance, then ideally he could go back and get COCs for both of his orders, assuming the work ultimately is done in compliance.
Okay, good. Thank you for that clarification. Commissioners, any questions or comments?
No.
I have, I see on the site plan that there is some encroachment on the 25-foot buffer zone.
Yes, and as I recall, as part of the enforcement order, that encroachment will need to be addressed. And in my talking with the engineer today, representing the owner, they did have a wetland scientist go back out and do that reflagging, and they expect that that same wetland scientist will be able to propose restoration work as needed for that encroachment into the no touch. And so I expect we'll be seeing that when we get the notice of intent, the full notice of intent submission for next week's deadline.
So I would make a motion that we continue this to the November meeting.
Second that.
A motion has been made and seconded to continue the enforcement order and everything for 1330 Pleasant Street until the next meeting.
Pickler, eye.
Curtis, I.
Whereas I, motion passes and you'll let them know. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is an enforcement order update for Claremont Avenue. Is the owner's representative present?
Believe, yes, I see Kevin Grady from Grady Consulting.
Good evening, everybody. It's Kevin Grady. Can you guys hear me now?
Well, Mr. Grady.
Hi.
Hi.
Just took a second for the panelists to screen to open up. Is it okay if I share a screen?
Certainly.
Thank you. So this property is under an enforcement order that the commission issued a while ago. We've been working with the property owner, his attorney, and also wetland scientist, John Zimmer, South River Environmental, to address the commission's concerns. Since the last hearing, John Zimmer has gone out to the property and dug the soil borings that were requested in the enforcement order to verify the delineation. So he's completed that. He's reviewed his wetland line. While he was out there, he thought he saw some areas where our topography may have been off. So we also sent our survey crew back out and tightened up our survey on the backside of this hill. Our survey, for the most part, previously concentrated on the soccer fields. This was more of a peripheral area. We weren't really working directly on this, so I could see some of that topography being off, but we updated that. The plan you see in front of you is a conceptual plan that we're working on with John Zimmer. He has started preparing a notice of intent and narrative for a restoration plan. I spoke with him this morning. He thinks he'll have the notice of intent done sometime next week. So given all of us consulting guys' schedules, it'll probably be the week after that. But what this restoration plan is showing in this green here, our intent is to pull back any fill within the 25-foot buffer zone and prepare a restoration planting for that area. The darker green is an area of regrading. We're going to regrade that slope to elevation 126. Right now is what we're looking at doing. We're constructing a berm across here at elevation 126, and then a small depression in front of that. So basically water running off that hill will be held by the berm and into this depression and will infiltrate, and it will help stabilize this slope here. It will help infiltrate water and protect the resource area. The remaining portion of the lot outside of the buffer zone, so this is the green areas outside the buffer zone, we're going to grade up to the limit of the soccer field grading. So this is where they will blend together, and basically this is the limit of work for the soccer field project, the sports complex project, and the limit of work for regrading the site. These piles will be removed, etc. Once we straighten out all that. So that's the update. We're close to submitting a notice of intent and getting everything in order for you, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Commissioners, any questions? And Dr. Shave, could we hear your report, please?
Okay, so at this time, in terms of what the commission can review, we've seen this conceptual plan, but certainly, as we have been doing, I recommend that we keep the enforcement order open at this time. It sounds like we will be receiving a notice of intent that will incorporate the requirements from the enforcement order, but certainly we will have to receive that notice of intent and review it both for compliance with the Wetlands Protection Act, and it will also be subject to the Mass DEP stormwater management standards. And so once we have that complete filing, we will be able to move forward on this. But in the meantime, I recommend the enforcement orders stay open until either restoration has been achieved, either through a restoration plan, or it's, in this case, we might be doing it through a notice of intent and order of conditions.
Okay, thank you.
We agree. We have no issue with that.
Mr. Grady, do you think that you would be able to have that available to us by November 16th meeting?
I do.
Okay. I entertain a motion to keep the enforcement order open and to continue this until the November 16th meeting.
I'll make a motion to keep the enforcement order open and continue to the November 16th meeting.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to keep the enforcement order open for map 181042 Claremont Ave and to extend to the next meeting on November 16th. Vote, please.
Bigler, aye.
Curtis, I.
Vora's aye. Motion made and passed. Thank you, Mr. Grady.
Thank you.
The next item, will you be here for the next item as well?
Yes.
Okay, is the request for determination of applicability for New Heights Builders for Howard Street, a sports complex, is that correct?
Correct. So this hearing, that you opened the hearing, right? I can go.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So as you're aware, there's a sports complex project. We've presented this in the past. There was just questions on the overlap of the two projects that I believe we've straightened out. I'll just do a quick overview. The wetland resource area is here to the south on the left side of the plan sheet here. The project the sports complex consists of constructing 4 soccer fields, a concession area, roadways, parking lot, stormwater, drainage areas, and a warehouse building for indoor sports use. And then there's a driveway behind it. I'm going to switch to focus closer on the limit of work here. That's closest to the resource area. So again, here's the wetlands resource area at a better scale. The red is the limit of work. The green is also basically the limit of work. The 100-foot buffer zone, of course, it's not shown on this sheet. I'll find it. It's got to be.
Is there a scale on your map? On your site plan?
So here's the previous, yes, there is. Here's the previous plan, and just so you can see, this is the 100-foot buffer zone here.
Mhm.
This is the limit of the limit of work. Red line that I'm showing on. Sorry about that. Sorry for the bouncing around here. Here we go. That's the same, those are the same two lines, these red lines. So this is a 40 scale, you know. Sorry, this it's bogging down because the size of the file.
It looked like it was,
Yeah, got it. So that's 120 feet by
Oh.
scale right there. Oh, we're well over
Yep.
100 feet to the closest point here.
thank you.
So basically the RDA is requesting a negative determination. The project is outside the 100-foot buffer zone and outside conservation's jurisdiction. And I'll be happy to take any questions if you have them. Sorry for the technical difficulties there.
No, it's quite all right. Before we go to questions, Dr. Chafe?
Yes, so I can give the update. My previous comments on revising the plans for consistency have been addressed, along with the additional information given for the work being planned under the enforcement order. It has also clarified what's being proposed here. So based on what's being presented for the RDA, these plans being shown here, the commission can consider issuing the -4 determination because the work described in the request is not within an area subject to protection under the act, including the buffer zone, the 100-foot buffer zone. So work done within said area as shown on the plan does not require filing a notice of intent. That is essentially what a -4 determination shows. And then just to follow up on that, as we've already addressed, that I also recommend that we continue to address the existing berm and any additional work on map 181-042 through the current enforcement order, which we have, or the commission has already voted that they will be doing by keeping the enforcement order open.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, Commissioner Beekler, Commissioner Curtis. Do you have any comments or questions?
I see that Dr. Shav has proposed that the gravel operation site access driveway be removed from the site plan. Does that mean they're going to put in a different driveway, or it's just not necessary to the plan?
From what I can see, it has been removed from the plan. So the driveway that is shown on the plan now is the driveway for the sports complex. The other driveway was shown on a previous iteration of these plans, and we asked that it be removed and clarified what work is being proposed. And so it looks like that is what's been reflected in what we're looking at now.
And the stormwater drain would have no bearing on the wetlands at all. It would address that issue, the stormwater management for the complex.
Right, so under, for example, if you grant the -4 determination, it is determining that the work is outside the 100-foot buffer zone. In this case, the limit of work being proposed is outside the 100-foot buffer zone. The language specifically states that it is found to be not applicable unless and until the work actually alters a wetland protection area. So if under some hypothetical something happened during the sports complex work that did somehow alter the wetland, then the commission could issue another enforcement order. But again, it's unless and until. So technically, until they're working on this project and have installed those stormwater structures, we can't say that it has altered the wetland resource area because it's not built yet. So that is essentially the -4 would be saying that this work is more than 100 feet away from the wetland. So by the regulations, it is not jurisdictional as of this review.
Thank you. And one more question, when do they expect to start the work on this project?
I'm
This
not
spring?
I'm not completely sure of that at this point. We have technical review with the city planning board October 31st. Following that, we go before the planning board itself. I'm not sure how long that will take. So I would think the beginning of the year, maybe. And then we'll have weather issues. So I'm really not 100% sure.
Okay. Commissioners, any other questions? Is there anyone present from the public that would like to speak on this issue? Dr. Shape, do you see anyone that might be present?
Yes, I see Counselor Lally. I will unmute Counselor.
Thank you. Thank you, commissioners. I wanted to say that I'm happy that the enforcement order was kept up on the last item. It is good to see that the intent of that is working, going in the right direction. And I appreciate seeing another step forward for a sports complex. I know that Dr. Shave said that this is not, inside sort of the scope of the commission because of the wetlands being too far away. But I would just ask, that we make doubly sure of that. This thing going forward, is a good thing, I would say, but only if it goes forward correctly. So I just, would ask, that we're sure that this is not going to displace, as sure as we can be, that this is not going to harmfully or negatively displace any water to any surrounding properties, many of whom have basements. That, and as this moves on, we'll raise the other concerns, as there are many, to the appropriate boards and commissions. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Councilor Lally. Is there anyone else present? Dr. Shafe?
I am looking, but I do not see any other hands. I see no more hands at this time, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilors, any other discussion?
Not on my end.
Okay. And so I entertain a motion to issue a -4 determination for the Howard Street Site Sports Complex.
I'll make a motion to issue a -4 determination for the Howard Street Sports Complex.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded.
Bigler, aye.
Curtis, I.
Forrest, aye. Motion passes.
Thank you for your time, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the notice of intent, West Chestnut Street, Knapp Center, Lynch's towing facility. Is anyone here for the applicant?
Yes, I see Scott Faria from JK Holmgren Engineering.
There we go.
Hello, Mr. Ferrier, how are you?
Good evening. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair, Commission members. We were before you folks 2 weeks ago to review the project, along with obviously the commission and the Beta, your consultant was present. We got through all of the conditions, reviewed the plan. We pretty much had one issue left. It was the submission of the buffer zone restoration plan that we're waiting on. We submitted that last week. I believe Dr. Shave had a chance to look at it, and I think we're pretty much all set now, Madam Chair.
Okay. Dr. Shea?
Yes, so we have received the 25-foot buffer zone restoration plan prepared by LEC. It contains both the comments on the fill removal and a planting and seeding plan, and then also monitoring notes, which all appear appropriate for the work proposed. So at this time, I've spoken with Beta Group, and they've recommended some special conditions to address the stormwater side of it. So at this time, in my latest report, this would be my October 14th report. I recommend some additional special conditions in addition to our standard special conditions. Both, again, the ones that Beta has recommended. I'm recommending some monitoring conditions related to the restoration area, including that a partial certificate of compliance shall be issued prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy for the building. And then because this application is also going through several applications with the Mass DEP solid waste section, I'm recommending a condition that the commission receive all of the final and approved applications that are submitted to Mass DEP solid waste, and that the commission has time to review them. And then if within 10 days of the receipt of those applications, those approved applications, it's determined that there's any additional documentation that changes the scope of what we're reviewing here tonight, then the applicant will need to come back with an amended order of conditions. But again, that would only be the case if, for example, one of the Mass DEP solid waste applications requires work other than what's being proposed as of tonight. So it's just another safeguard for the commission, because there are a lot of factors on this site. So we want to make sure everything is wrapped up before we sign off on any building permits.
Okay. Does anyone feel as though they'd like to see a copy of the restoration plan or any of that buffer zone? Do you feel as though you're comfortable with what Dr. Shave's recommendations are?
I do, because of the fact that we went through this pretty thoroughly last meeting. We went over everything.
Thank you.
I feel the same way. We've gone and visited the site. We've already had a chance to review this once before. And as long as Megan's conditions are met, I feel comfortable.
My only comment would be, I noticed within the files that there was a post-construction phase, a long-term pollution prevention plan, a draft of one that was included. And I was just thumbing through it, and if you could just be absolutely sure that that accurately reflects what will be done at Lynch's towing site.
Mhm.
There were some references to things like, you know, the materials that can't be used in the retail building, like oven cleaner and nail polish, arts and crafts material. I'm not sure that that necessarily would be there. Also, I think there was a reference to Taunton's watering lawn regulations. So I'm sure it's fine to borrow from other, you know, other organizations' plans if they're good, as long as it accurately reflects the utilization that it's going to be for. So public comments, if anyone here for the public for the Lynch's towing facility?
Okay. Madam Chair, I do not see any hands raised at the moment. I am looking. But I do not see any hands.
Okay. I'll entertain a vote to close the hearing for Lynch's towing.
I'll make a motion to close the hearing with the conditions outlined by Dr. Shave.
Seconded.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. The vote, please.
Beekler, aye.
Curtis, I.
Voris, aye. Motion passes. Since it is closed, I entertain a motion to issue an order of conditions with the special conditions outlined in the agent's report. Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion for order of conditions along with the notice of intent.
Second.
So the motion is that an order of condition is being issued. Is that correct?
So no,
For-
yeah.
Okay, for the towing facility at Chestnut Street Nap Center.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That motion has been made and seconded. Vote, please.
Beekler, aye.
Curtis, I.
Voris, aye. Mr. Ferry, that's a big job.
It certainly is. Thank you all for your help and patience.
And by
Have a
the
good-
way, I have a very quick question. Have you
Sure.
discovered any treasures as they were sifting through all that debris?
We haven't got to it yet, but we'll let you guys know if we see anything.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Okay. So let's see. Let's just double check. Okay, from number 6, we're going to take number 7 at the end of the meeting, correct? So we'd like to go on to number 8. Agenda item number 8, which is Heritage Court, a residential subdivision. Is an applicant or representative present?
Okay, I see. Okay. Promoting. See the applicant. Okay.
Okay, good evening. For the record, Steve Giosa, representing the applicant this evening.
Hello, Ms. Moshe.
And for this particular project, this is the Woodland Park subdivision, and this is a request to obtain a new order of conditions for a previously started and partially completed residential subdivision, the Woodland Park project, and this is specifically the Heritage Court portion of the project, the lower end of the project that is partially completed, as I know the commission members are aware. When we presented at the last meeting, there was a request that we take another look at detention pond number 3. I can share my screen if that's acceptable.
It certainly is. Thank you.
And so this is the section in question, and detention pond number 3 is this pond here at the upper end of the drawing. And the question was there any soil or groundwater testing ever completed in this area? We did go back through the record, found that Silver Engineering had done a test pit right here at the outlet point to the detention basin. We've added that soil data to the plan. They had determined a seasonal high groundwater level, and that information was used during the initial conservation and planning review of this particular project. I also went out to the site following the meeting and took a look at it myself, went into the detention pond. There's a gated access to the pond in this general area here. Walked into the pond, walked down the slope across the basin to the outlet structure. This was probably a day after some rainfall event, so there was a trickle running through the base, but the bottom of the pond was dry and stable. I looked at the outlet structure. Usually when you're seeing consistent elevated levels within the basin, you would see, given the amount of time this basin has been here, some staining on the outlet structure. It's a concrete retaining wall, essentially, with a V-notch weir cut into it. And there's no evidence of any excessive or periodic surcharging within the basin. So we believe the basin is functioning as originally contemplated at this point in time. It is, it's got some pretty good vegetation in it, and it's stable. And I didn't notice any accumulated sediments either. So I think this pond's actually in pretty good shape. But again, I think that was the item that had been asked to take a look at by the applicant. As we discussed at the last meeting, we had moved the limit of work away from the resource area as requested, and we think that addressed, I think, that big item that had been raised in the prior hearing on the project. And I don't think there were any other changes that we have presented for this evening, so be happy to listen to the agent's report and answer any questions you may have at this time.
Okay, thank you. Also, you have someone else with you, Peter. Could you introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
My name is Peter Venuto. I represent QS Private Lending.
I'm sorry, Peter, your last name?
Venuto. V as in
Venuto.
Peter, E-N-U-T-O.
I have it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Shafe.
Yes, so I believe the main outstanding item from the last meeting was to determine if there was a potential groundwater issue with Basin 3. I reviewed the follow-up inspection letter with Phil Paradis from Beta Group, and based on that review, he said that considering that it is a dry detention basin, the 2-foot separation from groundwater was not necessary. The only requirement would be that the bottom of the basin be higher than the mean annual high groundwater. And so based on the test pit, I believe that it showed the groundwater level at about 152 point something.
Mhm.
And based on the roadway as built, the current bottom of the basin is at 155. So it is higher than the groundwater level. So Phil did not have any other issues with that. Again, as we've discussed at the previous meeting, the basins are not all currently graded the way they're shown on this grading plan. And this grading plan is based on what was approved in 2014. But again, if you compare it to the as-built we currently have, there are some discrepancies that would need to be addressed. But in speaking with Beta, they think it is acceptable that that grading be addressed under this order of conditions, and really it would need to be because 2 of the basins are within the 100-foot buffer zone. So the commission will need to issue an order of conditions to help facilitate that regrading work as needed. So based on that, the discussions with Beta and our past hearings on this item, I would recommend again some additional special conditions in addition to our standard special conditions. Some of them are related to pre-construction work we've already talked about. For example, removing tires and other instances of dumping that may be on the site should be removed before the pre-construction meeting and approval of building permits. The existing of the fill with any evidence of construction debris should be removed before the pre-construction meeting. So again, all of these ones that we have discussed previously. And then in regards to the additional grading work, I am recommending the series of conditions that we include when significant grading work is proposed, and that is the requirements relating to having the environmental monitor, because we have, in addition to the basin work, some of which could be in jurisdiction to the commission for house lots 25 through 28. There is still going to need to be significant regrading work on those sites. And so I'm recommending our conditions for the environmental monitor and the monitoring that goes along with that. And then in regards to the regrading or the reconstructing of the basins to match the site grading plan, I'm recommending that we receive, once that work is completed, we get an updated as-built plan that includes the final basin elevations, including the spot grades for the top of berm elevations, and that this grading be confirmed prior to issuance of a complete certificate of compliance. And also, again, just as a safeguard for the commission, because this is a long time operating project and we would like to see it completed in a timely manner, I'm recommending that we put a condition of 1 year to completion for any of this basin reconstruction work, and that if within that 1 year time we haven't received the as-built and confirmed the proper grading of the basins, the commission shall issue an enforcement order and a stop work order for whatever phase the project is at until the basin work is completed. And then finally, I'm recommending some conditions related to the house lots themselves. Specifically, this would be for house lots 25 through 28, which are the ones that are directly within the 100-foot buffer zone, and in some cases are going up to the 25-foot buffer zone. So I'm recommending that our limit of work markers should be installed along the limit of work behind these houses. So that would be corresponding to the limit of work as it relates to wetlands flags B16 through B27 behind those 4 lots. And then at minimum, a partial certificate of compliance should be issued for these lots prior to certificates of occupancy for those 4 lots. And again, I'm adding that these partial certificates, they could be issued for each lot individually, or if the houses are complete at the same time, the commission could also entertain a request for a partial certificate for those 4 houses, however the timing works for the construction. And then finally, the minimum requirements for the issuance of a partial certificate of compliance would include an as-built plan with final grading, submission of documentation of the latest inspection of the stormwater management system. So again, depending on the timing, it might be time for another inspection by the time they're looking for the certificate of compliance, installation of the limit of work markers, And then finally, seeding of any of the disturbed areas between the previous limit of work and the new limit of work that we would be approving under this order. And so these are all outlined in my October 17th report. But again, I think given the history of the site and the fact that this is a new order of conditions for a project that was initiated in 2004. I think the commission just wants to have these safeguards in place to make sure that the project is on a timeline and will be completed in compliance with this new order.
Thank you, Dr. Shea. Mr. Jose, I just had a quick question. Is lot number 28 actually into the 25-foot buffer zone? Or is it?
Let's see if we can zoom in a little bit here for you. Yeah, originally, if you remember, the limit of work that was originally approved was back down into this area here, which was in the 25-foot area. We're now right up to the edge of it here, and we're actually got a little retaining wall area here to keep from encroaching any further in. So no, we're right up to the edge of it though. Here's the 25-foot line right here.
Okay. So no remediation plan or anything would be necessary at that point?
Yeah, I don't believe so, no.
Okay. Commissioners?
I have a question. Would a letter be given to the owner with the deeds to include information about the limitations of having a yard backed up to the vegetated wetlands?
I think we talked at the last meeting that obviously the order of conditions will run with the land and it'll be encumbered on each lot. So there'll be a cross-reference. And I think it's not a bad idea to have a cross-reference in the deed that there is an outstanding order of conditions. By the time the land is transferred based on the conditions outlined, we would be requesting partial certificate of compliances for the lots. So that would release those lots in theory from the order. But let's say, for instance, they sell a lot and they're not going to, start building for a year or so. Then, yeah, I think having some cross-reference to the order of conditions it's going to show up in the title, but there's nothing wrong with having a direct reference within the deed also.
Thank you.
Even a letter to the new owner would be, just from the Conservation Commission, I still think we, hopefully,
Sure.
we started to speak about that earlier. It would be,
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, it would be helpful, I think. Okay. Any other comments about the site itself? Or public comments? Is anyone here that would like to speak to the issue of the residential subdivision at Heritage Court?
Okay, I see
Could raise your
Jamal
hand.
Brathwaite has his hand raised. I will unmute him now.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Hello, Mr. Braithwaite. Yep.
Hi, so yes, my name is Jamal Brathwaite of 18 Parkview Lane. I live in Woodland Park and I'm one of the trustees of the Homeowner Association. On behalf of the Woodland Park property owners and residents, we're looking forward to the completion of this development. So I'm making a positive statement in favor of the applicant of QS Lending Trust to have the order of conditions renewed. I appreciate it being new order conditions, but overall, I want to highlight that the completion of the remaining home sites will increase the annual property tax revenue to the city of Brockton by approximately $70,000 per a year. And it just will increase overall quality of life for all abutting properties. So for that reason, we all unanimously are endorsing this application and hope that the Conservation Commission votes in favor of this applicant. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Braithwaite. Any other hands raised? Dr. Shiv?
Madam Chair, I saw a hand. Oh, let me see. I see Patrick Quinn. should be.
Hello.
Hello?
Hi, yeah, my name is Patrick Quinn. I just wanted to agree with what Jamal Brathwaite had mentioned about finishing this project. It's been going on for a very, very long time, and I think these conditions can be met by these new developers and stuff. And so I think the commission should move this forward in a fashionable manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other hands or public comments?
Madam Chair, I do not see any more hands.
Commissioners, are there any further questions or comments?
I don't have any at this time.
I don't have any at this time.
Okay. I entertain a motion to vote to close the hearing.
Make a
I make a-
motion to close the hearing for map 174 lots 394, 406 through 410 at Heritage Court.
I second the motion.
Motion has been made and seconded. Vote, please.
Beekler, aye.
Curtis, I.
Boris, aye. The hearing has been closed. I now entertain a motion to issue a order of conditions with special conditions as stated in the agent's report.
I make a motion for special conditions according to the conditions by the agent. Is that correct?
You want to, I think the motion has to have issue an order of conditions.
Issue an order of conditions. I make a motion to issue an order of condition.
Second.
The motion has been made to issue an order of conditions with special conditions as outlined in the agent's report for the residential subdivision called Heritage Court.
Beekler, aye.
Curtis, I.
Boris, aye. The motion has been made and passed.
Very good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Good night now.
Have a lovely night.
Thank you.
Number 9 on the agenda is a commission matter for regulations for the use of conservation land for Stone Farm. Dr. Schaaf, can you update us on that report?
Yes, so as I believe this would have been December 2019, which I believe might predate the current commissioners, but the commission at that time voted to adopt rules and regulations for conservation areas in the city of Brockton. And one of those regulations is a prohibition against camping. And about 2 weeks ago, I received notification from one of the stewards at Wildlands Trust of a tent that has been erected at the Stone Farm Conservation Area and it had been up for a few days. So I wanted to bring this before the commission because I believe this is the first time we will be dealing with a potential enforcement issue of the rules and regs for conservation areas. So just to give an update, I have spoken with the law department for some guidance on what specific steps the commission can take going forward when it comes to enforcement of our rules and regs. And then I also spoke to Wildlands Trust about how they handle these situations. And they say that, you know, when they find something erected in a conservation area, they will attach a notice of violation with a requirement that the structure be removed within 24 hours. And if they don't achieve compliance, they seek additional enforcement authority through an enforcement agency, either environmental police or a local police department. So I am awaiting an update from the law department to make sure, again, that we as a commission will move forward in the most responsible way for addressing any current and future enforcement issues. But I wanted to, at this time, let the commission know that there is a potential enforcement issue that we will need to work on for Stone Farm.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Shaver. And so once you have heard from the law department, will you outline for us what the enforcement steps would be so that we would be able to review that?
Yes, and I would hope before our November meeting, we would have that. And also, I would say preemptively, I expect the first step would be if there is still a structure or structures on Stone Farm, we would start in a similar way by posting a written violation notice. So I would say if that's something the commission would like to entertain a motion now, for example, and again, if we would like to condition it based on additional law department feedback, it could potentially be that you could motion to issue a violation for any tents or structures on Stone Farm pending confirmation with the law department. And so that way, if I do speak to the law department before November 16th, as the agent of the commission, I could post a violation notice if we get confirmation that that is a proper way to proceed.
So I entertain a motion to allow attachment of a notice of violation pending notification of the law department regarding infractions in conservation areas. Peggy or Commissioner Curtis or Commissioner Weichler, would you, I'm entertaining a motion, please, that we might attach a notice of violation for infraction of conservation area regulations.
Sure, I'll make a motion that we will proceed with attaching a notice of violation to Stone Farm conservation land if found plausible by the law department and per the conservation agent.
Might we amend that motion to be to any conservation area in Brockton? Would that be okay? Or would it only be Stone Farm?
You can certainly make the motion if you would like to essentially grant me as the agent the ability to issue violation notices, again, pending confirmation with the law department across conservation areas. You could make that motion.
So we want to, I think that's good. All right. I make a
That way
motion.
we won't have to keep coming back for each infraction on any conservation land.
Or other
It would
conservation?
be the same
Yeah.
regulations for any conservation land in Brockton. So I would say yes, all conservation land in Brockton.
So who's making the motion? Laura, do you want to
No,
do
I
it?
was just agreeing
Yeah,
with
okay.
you that it was all, but I would second Laura's motion for a notice of violation of infractions on conservation land.
Okay, so the motion's been made and seconded.
Beekler, aye.
Curtis, I.
Voris, aye. Motion's made and passed. Thank you, Dr. Schaaf. Now out of taking, was item number 7 out of order? Notice of intent for map 003049 Pleasant Street. That's the Blackledge apartment complex.
Okay, I see representatives from Conoco. I can start moving them now.
Hello, Mr. Toohill.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Damian Dimitrik is going to join me. I'm Mike Toohill from Conoco Engineers and Scientists, and Damian is also here with me this evening.
Mr. Dimitri.
Hello.
So I think, Madam Chair, where we left it before was we were awaiting the peer review from your engineers, Beta Engineering. We've received that peer review. They agree with the design that Damian has performed for the site. And I don't know that there were any other issues that we needed to discuss. You can remind me if there are other things, Megan, but I think it was the peer review letter that we were awaiting.
Yes, so I'll confirm, as we left it at the previous meeting, we had received additional test pit logs and supplementary correspondence about groundwater levels on the site that we had provided to Beta Group for additional review in relation to their previous decision on the project's compliance with the Mass DEP stormwater standards. And so the last letter we have from Beta Group is from October 3rd or 4th. And as of that review, Beta had reaffirmed their confirmation of the compliance of the project with the Mass DEP stormwater management standards. And Gary James with Beta Group is also here tonight, so he can speak on his review and also as we go forward with this hearing.
Mr. James, I've looked over the review. It's very technical, but I would appreciate a summary perhaps.
The summary is that when you look at the information that was submitted to you from, I believe it's Dr. Mobile and Scott Horsley, trying to emphasize the fact that we should be utilizing an adjustment to the groundwater associated with FRMTA based on regional groundwater levels. You know, based on the previous use of the site and the current condition of the site and what's happened to the site, you know, we disagree pretty much with, we disagree very much with their conclusions associated with this. And when you look at the results, the one benefit that we have on this site is that they did test pits on multiple days, multiple dates. They did them on October of 2020, June of 2021, March of 2021, and August of 2022. So when you compare the water levels between the two, and you look at the issues associated with where the regional groundwater levels in accordance with the well that even Dr. Mobile was utilizing, they don't correlate. They don't correlate at all. There should be some really significant differences associated with it, and they're not. So that pretty much concludes. And when you look at the system that's in Brockton itself, the models were at 166. The bottom of the system is at 172. So even as designed, it had a 2-foot cushion in terms of meeting the 4 foot of separation between the bottom of the system and the groundwater. Now, I will admit, if you don't feel comfortable with that additional 2 feet and you want, embedded within the limits of the design, there is the ability to be able to raise the system a little bit, probably another 12 to 18 inches. So I would leave that to the commission. If you want, I can give you the technical data associated with it and pass it along to Conoco to allow them the ability to be able to raise the system. Other than that, I'll turn it back to the chair.
Dr. Shea, we have your input on the modeling versus the groundwater levels versus.
Yeah, the FRMTA adjustment. Yeah. Remember this, the FRMTA adjustment is nothing more than a comparison with the water levels at the USGS wells. The USGS has a number of wells. I believe there's 26 of them located around Southeast and around Massachusetts to be able to monitor wells and figure out where the groundwater is on a regional basis. So you have the ability to make the comparison. In fact, the comparison, the one that we are comparing with is one in Norfolk. That's the
Norfolk.
closest one. Yeah, Norfolk, Mass.
Mhm.
But when you look at it, when you look at, the differences you should have from one to the next, like there was one that was done in June, one that was done in October 2020, and another one that was done in March of 2021. Well, there should be there should be almost 1.5 feet of difference between the two. Only 0.5 foot. Or there's only one. So you're not seeing the differential that you would see on a regional basin. And in fact, if you go up even higher, test pit 7 and FP4, the water levels that were determined in the two observations were actually the same. And there should be almost 1.5 feet of differential with them based on what you see in the observation well. So once again, I just, utilization of the Frimpter is not warranted here. The site does not behave that way. And I know that they went back and did a comparison with what they found in the monitoring wells on August 23rd. And when you look, in fact, I even noted it in my letter, when you look at the water levels on a regional basis from August 23rd and compare them with what was there on June 14th, they're almost the same. There's only about 2 or 3 inches differential between the two. So when you look at the June 14th logs, the test pits that they're looking at, which are around the existing buildings, the water levels are above the models. So I don't understand why they were so upset about the fact that on August 23rd, they found water above the models, because when Conoco did the test pits, they found the exact same thing in June. So why should that upset you if in fact, when they actually did the testing, they found the exact same thing?
So if water is above the models, doesn't that mean it's higher than what you would expect that mean water, high water to be?
Well, here's where the real issue is when you look at this site, because it's not a virgin site, it has been modified, and you look at the amount of fill that's been placed on it. My gut reaction is I believe there's a subsurface structure right in the middle of the lot, right around the two buildings, which is why you're seeing water above the models. And when you look at the rainfall data for the 2 dates, June 14th and August 23rd, the region got, I believe, 1.5 on June 14th and 1.6 just before the August 23rd. So it reacts very, very rapidly to that. And in fact, when you look at the test pits that they did, they even made note of the fact that they found some pea stone and they found some other factors down in the island that is to the south of the buildings, towards the back of the site. And what's funny is when you look at it, you look at the elevation of the water in the middle of the site, it's higher than both edges, which tells you that there's something controlling, there's something manipulating the water table in the middle so that it's being maintained higher in association with the rainfall. So it's not acting like a normal site. It's not acting like a virgin site. It's acting like it is being manipulated, that the water table is being manipulated, which is why you shouldn't be applying Frimpter.
What about the test pits in that area that, I mean, my personal concern is the area of the stormwater, what is the name of that? The stormwater system that's going to be installed on the Brockton site. What were the
Yes.
test pit data for that? I mean, what is that demonstrating?
That demonstrates that the groundwater is about elevation 166. In the bottom of the system, based on the models, when you look at the water levels were somewhere in the range of about 1 foot lower than that, which you would anticipate. So the bottom of the system is, in the bottom of the system as proposed is 172, which is 6 feet higher.
Mhm.
And as I stated, if you really wish to feel more comfortable, I can give you a quick letter and a quick review and send it back to Conoco, because there is about 18 inches of cushion involved in the design where they have the ability to be able to raise it a little bit. So that would really solve the issue associated with it. if you wanted to get it up to like 7.5 feet. I think it's there and with a few minor changes on the plan, not involving any grading or any changes in the grade. It's just there. It's just built into the design as it stands right now.
Mhm.
That way too, and I'll admit to you, if I had to do a FRMTA, let's say I wanted to do a FRMTA, well, FRMTA would tell you that in this site, that the region, that the changes in the water level would be pretty much in accordance with what you were seeing at the Norfolk well, which is about 4 feet. So if we go with the levels that were there, the adjustment would be about 3 feet, 3.2, 3.3 feet. So it'd go from 166 to 169.2. So if we raise the bottom of the system up to 173.5, then we're there.
Which would account, even if you did do the.
Even if
FRMTA,
you
it would
applied
account
for it,
that.
even if you
It would
applied
account
for it,
that.
we could, yes, we could account for it.
Right. Okay,
Madam Chair, can I ask Mr. James a quick question?
of course, go right ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Gary, under the stormwater guidance, what's the required separation distance between the bottom of the system and groundwater elevations?
It's 4 feet, or it's actually 2 feet. If you have less than 4 feet, then you're required to do a mounding analysis in association with it. But if you go to the 4 feet, then the answer is that you're exempt from having to prepare a mounding analysis to make a determination as to what the mound would be below the bottom of the infiltration system.
Okay,
So
and
that's real.
if I heard you correctly, the current design is 6 feet above.
Yes, yes. But what I'm saying is that if, in other words, if we were compelled to do a FRMTA, just on a whim here,
Yeah,
I don't agree that it should be done, but if you wanted to do the FRMTA, you do have the leeway within the limits of the grading, within the design as a sitting, to be able to raise that system up to give you another foot and a half.
yeah. I guess my point is that it's been designed in compliance with the Mass Stormwater standards.
Yes, I'm not arguing that. I'm just putting back to the commission that if
I
they
understand.
want- Yeah, if they want to feel more comfortable, there is that leeway within the limits of the design to allow them the ability to be able to raise that
Yeah.
system up.
And so if there isn't enough separation, then there isn't going to be appropriate drainage. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's
And
correct.
then what would
In other
happen
words,
then?
the separation is required specifically to allow you to make sure that in fact you are getting the treatment prior to
Right.
contact with the groundwater. That's really why you have the SEP. It's almost similar to a Title V system.
And so why wouldn't you do it to the maximum that you could in order to assure that you do get the maximum benefit from the stormwater drainage system?
We could, but like I said.
You can, but we're already 50%
agree
above
with
the required.
design. Yeah, I agree with the
Based
design.
on, it
but
depends, based on which calculation you used, right?
Yes, based on which calculation you use. But what I'm saying is that if you want to feel more comfortable about it, it's within the limits of the design to be able to raise the system some more.
Okay. And if this were in your backyard, would you suggest that they raise the limit of the design?
Myself personally, yeah, I probably would. Only because I don't like only because you can. There's no reason not to.
Okay.
I will agree with you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you.
On that one.
Dr. Schaaf, do you have any, we'd love your enlightenment.
So as of my October 11th report, my previous comments have been addressed. In terms of the ongoing stormwater management discussion, I have to defer to Beta Group. They are the commission's consultant for stormwater engineering. So they are reviewing this on behalf of the commission. They don't represent Conoco. They don't represent any third party with an interest. So as the commission's consultant for stormwater engineering, I defer to their judgment.
Commissioners, do you have questions? Yet?
I don't, not at this time.
I do have a question, Mr. James. In my mind's eye, I see that the wetlands here that are in Brockton, and I see the was it like a sewage area where the sewage is going to be in a similar tank, almost like the stormwater tank?
Yeah, the sewage is actually being treated through a secondary treatment unit. And I believe that I would let Mr. Toohill talk to that, because we really didn't look at it, because it's really the subject of a groundwater discharge permit. It's through DEP.
Right. And
But
I think,
yes, there is a leaching field up on the top side where that water is going to be applied.
so the leaching field is located on the
In the
top side,
front.
you say? In the
That's
front,
right, right
up
along.
against Pearl Street?
Yes, right
Up
on,
against
right
Pearl
along
Street.
on Union Street. Yeah, right along Union Street.
And is it on the eastern side of the property?
Yes, it is on the eastern side.
Okay.
Would you like me to share my
In
screen?
its entirety.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Dimitri.
That a little helpful?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
You
yeah,
could
so
point-
the leaching facility is over here.
The leaching facility. Thank you. I'm sorry. Okay. So the leaching facility is there, and the Brockton stormwater retention basin is that square there,
That's correct.
and the
Infiltration
wetland.
system.
Right. Thank you.
Yep.
And the wetland and the wetlands are the blue area there. I guess my concern is if water is coming through the system from the taps in the apartment complex, and that water will be going into that retention area for wastewater, correct? And then
It
that
goes-
water will
It goes through a
eventually.
wastewater treatment system,
Mhm.
which is a tertiary system. And then the discharge from that, which means that it's not only the typical BOD and solids removal, but it's also nitrogen removal.
Mhm.
And then after that, you have water coming out, and it's essentially almost tap water, but there's water coming out. And that water is then put into the soil absorption system, which is basically a leaching field.
Okay.
But it's very different than a septic system leaching field, which receives, a secondary or even a primary effluent out of a system. This is already treated through a wastewater treatment system.
Right.
And then it goes into there, and that system has been designed to allow the water to infiltrate down to groundwater.
Right. So that water will infiltrate down to groundwater.
Right.
And that groundwater therefore will also flow towards, I mean, I don't see topographical data on here, but I would expect that will probably go towards the wetlands and out towards the south, because I doubt very much it would be towards the pond. And so that area of wetlands be fairly spongy as a result of the water that's coming through from not the stormwater system, but from the wastewater system. So will that area be more spongy than it would have been otherwise?
So
And therefore-
right now, the mounding analysis that was performed for that system, which is under review by the DEP under the groundwater discharge permit, shows that at that wetland system L, which is that finger system that comes down from the road towards the main wetland, that there's a mound change of about 1/10 of a foot. And so, yes, there's a slightly higher groundwater going in that area. And the net result, quite honestly, Madam Chair, is if anything, it's going to keep that wetland a little wetter, and it may make that wetland a little bigger. It's not going to negatively affect that wetland system. And that's our current discussion with the DEP. And the DEP does look at the wetlands. They're also looking at French Pond. They're looking at Dorchester Brook.
Mhm.
Because a mound doesn't go in one direction. It goes in many directions out from that system.
Mhm. Mhm. Would you, by any chance, let me see, I think, where was it? Do you by any chance have the draft stormwater pollution prevention plan available? By any chance with you this evening?
Yeah, I can pull it up. Is there something specific you're
Yeah,
looking
page
to?
300.
Here, I'm gonna stop the share.
There's an aerial photo. I was looking at it last evening and I thought, I just had a couple of questions to ask because in all honesty, it's really good to have intact wetlands that are capable of absorbing runoff, stormwater, whatever from Brockton, in Brockton. And if they're already saturated, will they be as effective for Brockton if they're already saturated with water from a different community?
I'm pulling up that file now.
Okay. Okay, if you can do that, that would be great. I just want to take a quick look at it.
Yeah. So page 300.
I believe so. It was an aerial photo.
Very large document.
Yeah. There are a lot of large documents.
Yeah.
Big project.
Yeah.
Alrighty, I will screen share. Is this the aerial image that you are?
Yeah. So what is it? Do you know what the gray is? That gray area, that box is? Is that the area that's?
I think that's to create the map. We have to define an area of interest.
Okay.
And that's an area of interest around the site.
Okay, so the white line right through the middle would be the Brockton border? Is that correct?
Yeah,
Plymouth-
or I think it's labeled over on the bottom here as
Plymouth and
Plymouth,
Bristol.
Bristol County, but that is the line between the towns as well.
Is it possible for you to use your cursor to kind of demonstrate where the that the wastewater, that wastewater field, retention field, whatever that was called? Can you kind of show where that will be?
It's tough on this map, but that's roughly in this area.
Right there, yeah. Okay, and the Brockton stormwater retention area?
I am very, very much estimating here, over this aerial. But somewhere there-ish.
Right. Okay, and so those areas that are a little bit darker green, I assume would be more the wetter areas. I'm not sure. Actually, I'm really not sure. But you notice the density across the street, across Pearl Street, the density in the Brockton area. I've driven down Pleasant Street many, many times and seen lots of water that's running through Pleasant Street, and there is many culverts. I do know a lot of hiking around that area, walking around, and the culverts are often, running into the wetlands. And I really don't know. I'm just curious as to whether or not Mr. James, Mr. Dimitri, Mr. Toohill, would Brockton's wetlands be compromised as a result of the project? I mean, I feel as this is just a weird, and it's just an odd case because it involves two completely different communities.
Yeah, Madam Chair, it's a very good question, and that actually is a question that the DEP is looking at right now under the groundwater discharge permit for the soil absorption system.
I was wondering about that. Yeah. What about a wastewater treatment plan? Do you have that from DEP? Is that all set?
Of wastewater, I'm sorry?
Was it a wastewater treatment permit? Has that been all resolved with?
No, this is a groundwater discharge system.
Okay.
So it's different than if you were building a wastewater treatment plant and discharging out a pipe from the treatment plant. It's all reviewed under the groundwater discharge permit.
And when will that information be?
That's a very good question.
available?
That's a very good question. We've been back and forth with the DEP. We have other consultants that are working on that with the DEP right now. We do not have resolution to that. And I would respectfully request that when this project is conditioned, similar to what you did in a previous hearing, I think 2 hearings ago, where you had a solid waste permit issue from the DEP, that we'd be happy to submit whatever information we give to the DEP and the DEP gives to us as part of the order of conditions for this project.
Is there any way of finding out how long it will take for the discharge permit or information about the discharge permit to be available?
Damien, do you know the current status with the consultants working on that?
There's currently a back and forth. I believe they're having meetings to discuss it. No, I can't give you anything definitive. It's a back and forth, often, not through me directly, with the lawyers and those doing the mounding and groundwater discharge permit calculations. So, that is part of our site. It's at the front of the site and they're jurisdictional to that. But I can't give you a definitive timeline.
It's a fairly slow moving process, Madam Chair.
Mm-hmm. Water moves much faster.
Yes, even groundwater.
Megan, were there any other, what were the conditions that you wanted to, let me see if I have their form.
Yes, so as was just mentioned, I am recommending a special condition that the documentation and the permit from Mass DEP wastewater that we are discussing would be provided. Let's see, I believe it's the second one. If the commission would like to bolster that to make it the same as the condition that was included we were just talking about Knapp Center, you could add the additional language that the commission has, or if within 10 days of receipt of that information, the commission can determine whether there is additional information that requires the filing of an amended order of conditions. So again, it would be the same as we did with Knapp Center, where prior to the pre-construction meeting and any new work, we would get the final documentation and approval for this other permit. We would have time to review it, time for Beta to review it. And if there's any information in that permit or the documentation associated with that permit that changes what is being approved under the order of conditions, then we could require that an amended order be filed to address any design changes or any additional information that changes the project, if anything changes between
is
one
that
approval to another.
Is that wastewater permit, the Mass DEP wastewater permit, the same as the groundwater discharge? Is that the same thing, or are those?
Yes, I think it's, and again, I can be corrected on this, but my understanding, the specific permit is the groundwater discharge permit, and it is being issued by whatever is the wastewater section or division of Mass DEP.
Yeah, we submit a geohydro analysis to DEP first, in which they have to approve based on the flows. And then after that, the groundwater discharge permit is then submitted to DEP for their approval. So they have to approve it in 2 steps, basically.
Dr. Shea, would you be averse to adding a condition about increasing the distance between the groundwater and the, what was it that, I'm sorry.
In the bottom of the system?
Bottom of the system? Mhm.
I mean, in terms of known design changes, the same way we treat plan changes, it is the practice of the commission that we receive any plan changes prior to approval. So if the commission wants a plan change, for example, changing the separation or increasing the separation to groundwater, if that's a plan change the commission already knows it wants to see, then I would recommend that be shown on an amended plan, as opposed to what we're talking about with receiving the approved permit for the groundwater discharge. That's sort of a hypothetical
Yes.
finding something interesting in that, as opposed to talking about a design change you might already be considering.
But could you condition that, Madam Chair? Because we, you know, as long as Damien is okay with the design change, we can put that pen to paper and put that plan together and send it to you. And Mr. James has already done the review saying the existing system's adequate and it's just a margin of safety issue. So if you could condition that, that would be great.
Dr. Shave, I'm sorry, I haven't been doing this that long and this is pretty complicated for me. So the amended plan itself would have to be received, isn't that correct? As opposed to having it.
Yes, what Mr. Toohill is proposing is that we would issue the order of conditions with a condition that the commission receive an amended plan, which again, the commission can suggest any conditions it wants. It's just in terms of, again, I'm speaking on the commission's rules and filing information. It has not been standard practice for the commission to condition on the filing of plan revisions.
Commissioners. Commissioner Beekler. Commissioner Curtis.
I don't have any questions at this time, but I think there's public questions.
I just have one question for you, Megan. I mean, in the facts that when it comes to the factor where between 6 feet, 7.5 feet, raising it, not raising it, it meets the conditions of acceptability where it's at with the way it currently is planned. Is it not far reaching of the Conservation Commission to go past that if there is just is that just a preferred? Like, oh, this is what we prefer? Because for me, if it meets standard, it meets standard. So I'm just, because my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is with Beta and everything that's been tested, it meets standard. So why would we enforce or recommend a complete change, like a change like that? Is that something that would not be far reaching? Because for me, that's where I'm stuck right now on that subject.
Right, and I mean, it is the commission's decision of what the commission feels is protecting protecting or upholding the regulations of the Wetlands Protection Act. Something, yeah, the commission does need to consider is that if we are, if the commission accepts the conclusion that the stormwater design meets the stormwater management standards and was designed in according to those standards, then that is something the commission needs to decide. Is it overreaching to but consider that not also upholding the regulations of the Wetlands Protection Act? And again, we also, just to keep it clear. I think we are at times talking about two different concerns. There is the groundwater separation issue with the stormwater management system. And then we've also been talking about the groundwater displacement in relation to the wastewater system, water discharge. So there's sort of two things. There's the stormwater management standards for the system, and then there is this wastewater discharge system. And again, with the wastewater discharge system, there is a separate analysis going on that's before Mass DEP that at this time we don't know if it's been approved, and I don't think we have seen that. So from my perspective, I think you've pointed out sort of where we're at with the stormwater management side of it, the stormwater management standards. If there's still concern about the calculations and data and approval associated with the wastewater discharge, then again, the only ways to address that are either to put in conditions related to the discharge permit, or to, if the commission wants to decide that you need to see that application and see that permit before you can make your decision. But again, I just want to make it clear there's two different water conversations happening. So
Right, but I
the
think I
commission
want
needs
to point out
decide
that
where their concern is.
I'd like to point out that the wastewater absorption system is a state permit subject to the DEP, not subject to the Wetland Protection Act. We're talking about the stormwater infiltration system under the Wetland Protection Act. And I understand the concern about the soil absorption system. And I understand the concern about making sure that you get the information that we're giving to the DEP, and we're fine with that. But it's not a jurisdictional matter.
Right, but the stormwater part is, and water will
Yes, it
find
is.
water. Water
Yes, it
always
is.
finds water, yeah.
Yes.
And Mr. James, you're from Beta, correct?
I mean, yes, I am. Yes, I'm
Yeah.
from Beta.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm not with Conoco.
no, okay.
I'm not a
And you would
proponent
not
of
be
the-
averse, you would not be averse to taking that extra little measure of separation in order to.
No, and like I said, if the commission feels comfortable, I mean, if push comes to shove, I could justify it in terms of the issues associated with the review. And as I said to Megan, I can give you another review letter, especially based on the revised data, some of the additional data that has been received from the consultant from Hill Law. I can certainly do that and give you that additional data so that you would have the ability to be able to justify the condition associated with raising the system up just slightly, enough to be able to give you that additional comfort.
Okay, and that is from Beta, so, okay.
Yes.
Thank you, thank you. Were there members of the public that would need to be heard, or before we continue?
I will start with Elizabeth Pyle, so that she can introduce who else we might be looking to hear from.
Hi, this is Elizabeth Pyle. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I don't know why my video is not on.
Not
giving me the option to turn on the video.
So, Madam Chair, right now everyone is an attendee. If you would like anyone to be promoted to panelist, I recommend it be done through the chair.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I'd like to request being promoted to a panelist along with Mike Mobile and Scott Horsley, who are both here today and would like to make a presentation on their analyses. And I know that Mr. Mobile in particular would like to share his screen.
I have no problem with that, but it really has to be a short presentation. It is getting late. 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. And we understand the hour, but we also feel that public participation is really important here. And we represent neighbors and abutters to the site who are concerned that their interests be represented. So I'd like to introduce Mike Mobile, who is going to speak first, and then Scott Horsley will speak second. But Madam Chair, you really asked the question of the evening, which is why the groundwater levels in the monitoring wells are higher than the modeling for the estimated seasonal high groundwater. And that is indicative of the fact that the analysis is suspect. And so Mr. Mobile is going to talk about that. And before he goes, I would just like to say that Mr. James mentioned that this site is not acting like a normal site. I quoted him and wrote that down. And we agree, this site is not acting like a normal site. And we feel that it's very important that additional monitoring wells be done to determine that seasonal high groundwater in the area of the infiltration basin in Brockton in order to get clarity on this issue, particularly where the site has been disturbed in the past so extensively. And we've heard that there may be subsurface materials there and pea stone, and there are problems with this site not acting like a typical site that need to be addressed to ensure that the system, the wastewater system and the stormwater system function properly. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Mobile, and he would like to explain his response to Beta's recent letter and to clarify some issues there. So thank you.
Okay, a few minutes, please, Mr. Mobile.
Yes, Madam Chair, I will do my best. It looks like I don't have the ability to share a specific screen. Is that correct?
Megan, is Michael a
He is a panelist.
panelist?
All right, I will do my best with this. I'm not seeing a screen choice. All right, are you seeing a full screen picture? If I turn on my slides here, do you see a PowerPoint slide that reads continue review?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Madam Chair and Commission members. I appreciate the opportunity. I will be as brief as possible. My name is Michael Mobile. I'm the president of McDonald Morrissey Associates, and I'm appearing this evening on behalf of the butters to the proposed project. Just a quick background on myself. I have 3 degrees, a bachelor's of science in hydrology from the University of New Hampshire, a master's of science in environmental engineering, and a PhD in civil engineering from Virginia Tech. And I have nearly 20 years of professional experience as a groundwater hydrologist and as a groundwater modeling specialist. So I think I certainly qualify as being capable of performing a technical review of the groundwater hydrology issues as they exist relative to the applicant's proposal. I've submitted a couple of letters or contributed to a couple of letters at this point. Really boiling my presentation down to focus on one key issue this evening. You can certainly refer to my letters to get the bigger picture of my opinions, but really going to talk about tonight is this estimated seasonal high groundwater condition. And I think Liz did a good job, Madam Chair, of pointing to your comments, because I think you're right on point with what you said. Let's just quickly, though, talk about why the estimated seasonal high groundwater condition is important. It serves as a key threshold, and we talked about this a bit. There's a 2-foot minimum threshold where the system is not even okay to be installed if it doesn't provide at least 2 feet of separation above this estimated seasonal high groundwater condition. That's directly from the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook, and I'm showing the highlighted section here. The other critical threshold is 4 feet. As Mr. James referred to, if the system is less than 4 feet above that estimated seasonal high groundwater condition, there are additional analyses required. And where I'll disagree with Mr. James, it's not just intended to provide a treatment function. There are also potential hydraulic concerns. So if groundwater does mound on top of the water table as the system operates, and that mound reaches the bottom of the system, the infiltration capacity of that system can drop off precipitously. And that can cause a lot of downstream effects. The water has to go somewhere, so your outflow rates can increase in response. And in both cases, the amount of groundwater recharge that's being provided and the rate of outflow, those are stormwater performance standards that need to be met. And the applicant's analysis does not account for any sort of groundwater mounting effect as it stands. So this is important. If we don't have 4 feet, performing this groundwater mounting analysis is absolutely critical. So I won't linger here, but we've talked about what the applicant is using to set their estimated seasonal high groundwater condition. You've seen the test pit logs, and you've seen that just providing a sampling here, but some locations, this modeling or redoxymorphic features in the subsurface were observed in test pits, and the applicant in general has used those levels to set their estimated seasonal high groundwater condition. I'm highlighting in red here, not all locations or those features weren't observed in all locations, but where they were, that's effectively what the applicant's using to set this
Mike,
condition.
if I may, what's showing right now is figure 14, French Pond, Dorchester Brook. Is that the slide that you want?
That is not. All right, I apologize. Let me quickly share something else. Okay. Do we see a full screen slide now?
Redoxymorphic.
Not full screen, Mike. Go for the full screen.
All right, I apologize for this. Full screen now? Close
Yes.
to it?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, it seems like I always struggle with Zoom, so I apologize. But what I was referring to are these test pits here that I'm showing on this figure. Purple circles are where those features were observed, red where they're not. Now we also have groundwater levels that have been measured in monitoring wells on site. Those water levels were measured on August 23rd of 2021. They're reported in the applicant's hydrogeologic investigation report. You can see on this figure to the right when those were measured. It was at a time based on the nearby USGS monitoring well, where you can see the blue levels, the measured water level in that well, where it's marked, that's August 23rd of 2021. The red line is the average groundwater level over the 2021 calendar year. You can see it's well below that average condition at that time. And the green line just shows where it is on a monthly average basis over the period of record. So, two things to observe. When those water levels were measured on site in monitoring wells, the condition was very likely below average. Water table is lower than average. And in general, that coincides with what you'd expect seasonally. It's August or late August when it's been warm for a while, it's been dry for a while, the water table has come down. So what we can do is what I did in my letter, which is compare in elevation space the position of those redoxymorphic features that the applicant is using to where the measured water levels were from the monitoring wells, and see what should conceptually apply is if those redoxymorphic features are indeed indicative or representative of the highest groundwater level, highest groundwater elevation, I believe is a specific language from the Mass Stormwater Handbook. There's no way that water levels measured during August when it's dry and the water table is low, there's no way those should be above what the applicant's setting and using for their estimated seasonal high groundwater condition. And I'm just going to jump out of here really quickly and share a different screen to show you this in a little bit more detail. All right, so now you should be seeing a figure from GeoHydroCycle, figure 14. This just shows the site. Okay, so you can see actually that black outline, Madam Chair, is the outline of the new dimensions of the proposed wastewater infiltration area. You can see the wetlands, and you can see French Pond, Dorchester Brook, et cetera. So let me do a couple of things here. I'm going to turn on the positions of the monitoring wells. So where you see these yellow circles pop on, those are where the monitoring wells are on site that were measured in August. Okay. Now what we also have are the locations in the test pits where these redoxymorphic features were observed. So where you see these gray symbols popping on, that's those locations, and I can confirm that with a figure that will come up here in a moment. So this is from the Conoco plan set. You can see those gray symbols coincide with the positions of the test pits. There aren't symbols in all locations because they were locations where those features were not observed. Okay, so now what we can do is simply fit surfaces to these data points. They're represented in elevation space. Okay, and we can fit surfaces. So for the monitoring wells, if I fit this blue surface, I'm simply connecting the elevations at which groundwater was measured during August of 2021. Again, low water table conditions at that time. And then what we can do is turn on the surface that's fitted to the modeling observations, the redoxymorphic feature observations. And just to give you a sense for direction here, what you're going to see is the red surface, which represents the redoxymorphic feature elevations at the northern part of the site, is above where the water table was measured. But as you move south on the site and into the vicinities where the stormwater infiltration areas are proposed, and I can turn those on here, so where you see these rectangles popping on, these are the approximate positions of the proposed stormwater infiltration areas, and this one I've just highlighted is the one that crosses the Brockton line. You can see that as you head south, that blue surface comes up above the surface representing the redoxymorphic features. And if we rotate this in space, we can see for certain, right, that difference, that those measured water levels start getting well above the redoxymorphic features as you move south. In some of these areas where we've got a test pit relatively close to a monitoring well, and as we're moving south toward the infiltration areas, those differences are, I'm forgetting the numbering here, but there's one location right here that I believe that's FP5. Let me just check this quickly. Yes, so that's monitoring well CMW04 and test pit FP5. The modeling observation there is 167.4. The measured groundwater elevation during August was 169.4. So that's a 2-foot water table was measured 2 feet above the redoxymorphic features at that location. There's another location, I believe it's this one, CMW2. Oh, sorry, it's this one with a test pit nearby. The difference there is 2.7 feet. Okay, so these aren't minor differences as Mr. James is contending, you know, and are being addressed by observations of weeping in the test pits. These are significant differences and shows that the redoxymorphic features make absolutely no sense, especially as you move to the south. Okay, let me show you one more.
Dr. Mobile?
Yes.
Didn't Mr. James say there had been fill, lots of fill brought into the area and things like that? Wouldn't that account for that?
Well, the fill is certainly, it gets thicker as you move south, Madam Chair, but it's somewhat irrelevant to the question of where is the estimated seasonal high water table. It doesn't matter if it's caused by the fill or what's really causing it. It's necessary to represent it correctly.
Okay, I totally understand and I can appreciate very much. I did set a timer for 15 minutes and my timer has gone off.
Okay. Let me wrap up really quickly, Madam Chair, if that's okay.
2 more minutes.
Okay, just for quick reference here, I just turned on separation distances from these systems. So -2 feet, -4 feet, and we just look at this. I mean, you can see that that level, if you project out, it's getting above the 4-foot threshold, almost certainly. Now, ultimately, I'm not asking for anything crazy here, but what's abundantly clear is we can't rely on these redoxymorphic features. This issue has to be resolved, and the most appropriate way to do so, even according to the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook, is to simply install monitoring wells in the vicinities of these proposed infiltration areas and instrument them with pressure transducers and measure groundwater levels. Let's actually measure groundwater levels and get a better idea of what the estimated seasonal high groundwater condition is, rather than using some indicator like a marking in the soil profile that's clearly erroneous here.
Well, won't this be taken up as a result of a groundwater discharge permits?
No, Madam Chair, it will not. This is relative to the stormwater infiltration design. So the claims of compliance with the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook, they depend on a properly and a representative estimated seasonal high groundwater condition. This is how the system gets designed in many ways. Has to show compliance, that it's providing adequate separation. They have to perform a groundwater mounting analysis if less than 4 feet is provided. If you don't have the right estimated seasonal high groundwater condition, all those things can be ignored.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation.
You're welcome, Madam
Appreciate
Chair.
it.
And Commission members, thank you.
Were there any other, were there any other members of the public?
And Scott Horsley still has his hand raised.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I will be brief, but I want to just add a few comments to what Dr. Mobile just said. And first of all, briefly, as a matter of introduction, I have served on the Mass DEP Stormwater Advisory Committee since its inception in 1996. I've been very involved in the development of the standards, so I think I understand them. Point number two, this discussion about Mass DEP reviewing the impacts on the wetlands and the stormwater facilities, absolutely false. They are not going to do that. They are not doing that. I've talked to them about that's not their purview. Their purview is about the facility itself, the hydrologic impacts of the infiltration system directly underneath the system. I have reached out to them and provided a comment letter. They should also look at the impacts on Dorchester Brook, which they are considering, but they are not going to evaluate the impacts on this wetland. That is not part of their purview. Please check with them, and Mr. Turhill thinks they are. I would love to see some documentation of that. I am 100% confident that he is wrong on that. The next point is that I want to emphasize and clarify maybe what Dr. Mobile is saying, and this is really important. So the water levels that are dependent on designing these stormwater infiltration systems, which is within your purview and is not in Mass DEP's purview, is the estimated seasonal high groundwater level. We need a starting point on which to evaluate that. They are using mottling levels. As they said in the last hearing, this site has been significantly modified, which is absolutely true. And the mottling levels are no longer indicative on the high water levels. How do we know that? As Dr. Mobile said, in the August test pit measurements, the measured water levels are higher than the long-term estimated high levels according to the mottling levels. That can only explain one thing: the site has been modified, and the mottling levels, mottling indications are not reliable. This is not our information. This is the applicant's information. There are 6 locations where measured levels in August, which, as Dr. Shea will know well, is not the high water level time of the year, it's the low water level of the time, is higher than the reported mottling levels. Now, you might ask, how is that possible? And I have a theory, which I think is a pretty good theory. The site has been modified significantly. Trees have been cut down. That decreases the evapotranspiration rates, increases the recharge rates, and the water levels on the site are not what they were naturally, but they are existing levels, and that's what they need to use for the design levels. So these estimated season high groundwater levels based on mottling on the applicant's information alone clearly are not reliable. We need better information, as Dr. Mobile has outlined, and as is clearly in the Mass DEP guidelines, which I in part drafted. If you read it carefully, it says mottling levels are usable unless there's something that suggests they are unreliable. We certainly have that on the site. In that case, you look at USGS index wells, which is what Dr. Mobile is suggesting, and you do more on-site water level measurements through the spring condition, which we are also recommendations. So our recommendations are perfectly consistent with what Mass DEP Stormwater Handbook says. The other comment I want to make is that there was some discussion about the interaction between the wastewater system and the stormwater system. And as the chair correctly pointed out, the wastewater system is not far away. That is going to cause groundwater modeling impacts, which are cumulative and need to be added to the mounding effects of the stormwater infiltration system. That analysis has not been provided. That is required for this commission to make decisions on whether or not these systems are going to function. Mr. Tohill's suggestion, or the peer reviewer, Mr. James, who I'm not sure is the applicant or the peer reviewer at times, is suggesting that we could add a foot or so to take care of the problem. I don't know, with all due respect, Mr. James, I don't know where you're getting those numbers, because Dr. Mobile is showing more than 2 feet based upon August levels. I know, I'm sorry, I don't mean to, this is not comedy, sir, this is truth. If you look at Dr. Mobile's data, it's showing more than a 2-foot change. So for you to suggest that a 1 or 1.5 foot adjustment is going to take care of the problem, I honestly have no idea where you're getting that data, because
Mr. Horsley, I am quoting you the numbers directly from the
Madam-
USGS
Madam
wells.
Chair, may I finish? Madam Chair?
I am
Chair?
quoting you those wells. I
Madam Chair, may I
apologize.
finish?
Gentlemen, I think that we've heard plenty to feel as though maybe we need more information, and perhaps we need to continue to the next meeting. I just did.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I would never interrupt another witness. Thank you. Unprofessional.
You sitting there calling me a liar, Scott?
Mr. James.
I said unprofessional, sir.
I apologize. I'm sorry.
Apology accepted.
Are there any other participants with their hands up? Any members of the public that are asking to be heard?
Counselor Minicello had his hand raised, Madam Chair. He's moving, but I think I have him.
Good evening.
Hello, Councilor Minicello.
Hi, how are you? I will be brief. I've certainly been asked by many of the neighbors to advocate on their behalf, and without trying to make a joke out of this, when a problem arises later on, if the wetlands in this area, the absorption rates are not what they were designed for, or not what people thought they were to be, the problem is going to flow onto my lap to try to figure out what to do now, because people's yards are being flooded, or there's water in basements and things like that. For Brockton residents over there, there's no upside to this. It's only the potential for problems to arise. So I understand that I'm learning a lot by listening to the experts talk about the different data, and from what I gather, as a layman in this, it sounds like the data in question that's being relied upon may not be accurate because of the modifications that have been done over on that site over the years. The data that the developer's using is, I guess, we'll call it pure data that resulted from unmodified or undisturbed land, and the numbers and the readings are based on that. But the gentleman, at the end, we're saying, hey, wait a minute, something doesn't sound right. And even Mr. James, agrees that there's something going on there in terms of there's more water, or there's less absorption than there should be. So in essence, at the end, both experts are at the same place. It's just a matter of, how bad it might be. So it sounds to me that that readings need to be done based upon this sort of new modification, or this new development, where we're not dealing with a pure undisturbed site, and you need to make you need to take the readings based upon what exactly exists over there, because the potential for a problem for Brocktonians is great, and the upside for those Brocktonians does not exist. It's a matter of only bad things are going to result, as opposed to benefits to this development, and it's all going to run south to Brockton and into the wetlands. So all I'm saying to you is that I think for the Brockton residents, we need to be cautious. We're not looking to be unreasonable, but I think we need to make sure that the data and the testing is being done from a starting point that's accurate. That's all. Am I an expert to say what the accurate starting point is? No, I'll rely on the experts, on the call. But to me, something's not right here in terms of you have very smart people saying that, there's something going on over there because that land is wetter or, not absorbing like it should. And obviously there's been some modification over to that site. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Dr. Shafe, is there anyone else?
Scott Horsley still has his hand raised, but I believe it has been raised. I don't see any new hands.
Dr. Shafe, I do have one additional comment, if I may.
Through the chair, yes.
Through the chair,
Through the
yes.
chair. I was actually interrupted and cut off, Madam Chair. I had one final comment, if I could just finish. And that would be that I wanted to agree with Dr. Shafe. She said correctly that these modifications should be made, in my opinion, I should add, these modifications should be made prior to plan approval rather than the condition. In my opinion, it makes no sense whatsoever, given everything we've heard, including Mr. James, that there's some unknowns on this site. This should be figured out before you approve the plan. Condition this, frankly, I'm trying to avoid using the term crazy, but I would use that because you can't fix it after you build the site. There's conditional approval doesn't make any sense to me. So I would agree with Dr. Shafe that this needs to be figured out before you issue the final plan approval. And that was my last comment before I was interrupted and cut off. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
If I may, Madam Chair, just one single comment. As I stated, if I may, as I stated, I can certainly give you the data necessary to determine how I've come up with this additional 1.5 feet as it relates to the well. So that's something I can certainly respond to, and I can give it to you, and I can hand it up, and I can give it to the commission.
Okay, if you could do that, that would be appreciated. One other thing,
Yes,
actually,
I can
from
certainly do
Beta.
that.
One other thing, one other question from Beta. I know at one point there was a Beta report that I had seen. It was from a while ago that had mentioned something about parking on the Brockton site, and I just wondered if you knew anything about that.
Yeah, that was my fault. I misinterpreted the plan. There's two lines there, and unfortunately, it was a property line rather than the city line and the city boundary. So I apologize for that. It was just I was incorrect on that.
So there will be no parking.
There's no parking now.
Brockton
The only actual activity within the city limits is going to be the subsurface system, the infiltration system.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners? Any comments, questions?
Sounds like we need more information, more accurate information, a little more detailed before we can make a decision, especially in light of the new information that we were presented tonight.
Mr. James, if you could update that report, perhaps?
I can. I can certainly do that, and I can actually make a prediction too in terms of I can make a supposition relative to why I believe there is something going on the site and what I believe is occurring. I'll put it in writing.
Okay.
So that
appreciate that very much.
Mr. Horsley has the opportunity to review it also.
Okay. Very good.
Will continuing this till November be enough time to get everyone on board with the updated information?
Dr. Shafe, what do you think about that?
Given that it's a month and we've already discussed it, I don't think it'll be an issue to update what we have based on what we've heard as of tonight. Obviously, I can't speak to that if we receive that updated report from Mr. James and then we receive additional information following that, then of course I can't speak to what will the response be to that, but certainly I think we can get the response that we've just discussed for the November meeting.
Okay, that would be lovely. Thank you. I did have one other question. Maybe for Mr. Toohill. What kind of fencing are you gonna have around the boundaries? Would that be Mr. Toohill?
Damien probably can address that better than I can.
Mr. Dimitri?
The fencing around the chambers is just a stockade fence. It's just to prevent snow blocking over, or not a stockade, but a post and rail. What was proposed as a signage or a barrier to prevent snow from being pushed over that area. Also, it's the 3-to-1 slope after that. So if that area is it'll be a grass landscaped area. So just a little bit of edging there to.
And what about not only that, the top surface of that? What about the actual edge of the property itself? Will there be fencing all around the property up along the wetlands? The wetland side, the Wildlands Trust side?
Not there's fencing on top of the retaining walls. There's no fencing outside of that.
No, on top of the retaining walls?
Yeah, there's fencing on top of the retaining walls, a lot that surround the entire perimeter of the fence or of the site. Through the Brockton side, and behind. Behind the site. So there's fencing on top of the retaining walls as a fall prevention measure.
I had received a phone call from someone who asked if there was some way to establish some kind of perhaps a netting on that fence to prevent litter from blowing into the wetlands. And I believe at DW Field there was going to be something, because there was going to be a hotel that was going to be erected right next to DW Field. And one of the conditions was going to be that there would be a netting on the fence to prevent litter from blowing into that, into the DW Field wetlands. So I'm just putting that out there. I don't know if that could potentially become a condition that would keep litter away from the wetlands as well. Even perhaps, I know that Dr. Shave had asked for a gate at one time at the stairs on the wall. And I know there was some hesitancy against putting in a gate. Is there some way that there might be an unlocking gate and then would have net over it to prevent just debris from blowing into the wetlands? Not a gate to prevent people from going in, but really just a physical barrier to prevent debris and litter. I mean, there'd be quite a number of people there in that fairly small area. And having lived when I was much younger in a subdivision, there was plenty of litter.
We can take a look at that, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may, I just
Yes,
want to clarify, I know this was in regards to the Westgate Drive Hotel. And I just want to clarify that the discussion of the fence with, I believe it's the mesh or the insert slats, it was a condition of the Zoning Board of Appeals decision.
Oh,
So
okay.
technically it was
Sorry.
not part of our order of conditions.
Okay.
But as it was, the Zoning Board of Appeals already granted their decision, and their decision included the fencing with the inserts. So technically that was already conditioned before the commission issued their
Okay,
order.
I remember the discussion, but it seemed to me something that would be perfectly reasonable in this kind of a, trying to keep similar. Yeah. Thank you. So perhaps we will continue till the next meeting. Get an updated report then from Mr. James. Any other updated information, and perhaps add those extra couple of conditions if that's okay with the applicants.
Continuance is fine, Madam Chair.
Okay. Could I have a motion, please, to continue to the next meeting?
I make a motion to move the Blackledge infrastructure in Brockton to the November meeting.
Second,
Motion's been made and seconded.
Spiegler, aye.
Curtis, I.
Morris, aye. Motion's been passed. We will see you in a month.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Meeting is, oh, do we need a vote to adjourn the meeting?
I make a
doesn't hurt.
motion to adjourn the meeting.
Okay,
Second it,
motion's been made and seconded.
Spiegler, aye.
Curtis, I.
Morris, aye. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.